Stuart, thank you so much for joining us today. The travel and tourism industry, there's a lot of competition. It can be hard to stand out and differentiate yourself, especially with all the other beach locations and destinations along the East Coast there. But you have certainly hit it out of the ballpark with this one. Tell us a little bit about how this project came about.
I took over as the CMO for Visit Myrtle Beach about 3 years ago, and I came in with the mindset, having learned a lot about what works and what doesn't from the B2B marketing space, with the philosophy that paid media was going to continue to decrease in its effectiveness over time. We'd seen that consumers were increasingly rejecting advertising. They increasingly were using things like pop-up blockers. We knew that the big guys, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world were increasingly becoming larger gatekeepers of their audience, and it was getting more expensive. And so we knew that we as an industry, as destinations, were spending the vast majority of our budget on paid media, and over time it was becoming less effective. And so we sort of had the philosophy that we need to lean more into building our own audience through owned media, and we specifically wanted to do that through branded entertainment. We wanted to, instead of selling people, we wanted people to make their own decisions, have their own thoughts and feelings to influence their behaviors so that they chose to come to Myrtle Beach as a destination instead of being told to. So that was sort of the incarnation. And we dabbled in that space. In my first year here, we created a TV show called Chef Swap at the Beach, which has been on the Cooking Channel, is about to go on to Binge Network and Tubi and some others. But that was really a little more of a direct promotion of Myrtle Beach. It took two chefs from local restaurants, switched them into different kitchens, and we presented it like a competition show. But really, the whole time we were showing people that Myrtle Beach had an amazing culinary scene with over 2,000 restaurants, and so we're trying to elevate the brand, if you will. And that was really successful. Way more effective in terms of media pickup and media, just the value of the audience than any paid project we've done thus far. And so we wanted to double down on that philosophy, and we wanted to do something that not just was impactful to us, but also made a dent in the universe. And so we were sitting around watching some of what was popular on TV, and came across the show Love on the Spectrum. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about the Myrtle Beach area is we have done a ton of work over the last decade to become very autism friendly. We have an amazing organization here called Champion Autism Network that has paved the way by training thousands of frontline workers on how to identify challenges with people with neurodiversity, how to accommodate them. And that's things like, if you're coming to a hotel, you can actually check in at the car instead of having to go inside with all the stimulation. If you're at a restaurant, you can come in and you can get your food in a to-go box and get your check straight away, so that if you have a meltdown, some issue comes up, you can just bounce out of there. And then a lot of our attractions offer sensory friendly hours where the lights are not quite so dim or the noise is not quite so loud. We've laid the groundwork to be a really inclusive, welcoming place for autism families and people with neurodiversity. So we saw the show Love on the Spectrum, and we said, what would that look like in terms of travel? And so we came up with this concept called Traveling the Spectrum. And what we did is we said, well, if we can bring families here that maybe struggle to travel and show the good, the bad, and the meltdowns, we can encourage other people to try it and show that there is a path forward, and we can provide resources. And so we knew that it was going to be a challenge. We shot the three families coming to town last year. We've edited it together, and it's exceeded our wildest dreams. It's a 6-episode TV series, but it's going to change the world. It's going to change the way people see autism. It's not going to be the one-dimensional thought where a lot of people right now think autism is this disability where people are a little bit quirky or a little socially awkward. And it's going to show that there are degrees of the spectrum. That's why it's called a spectrum. It's going to show that people can be a part of the solution by showing a little more empathy and a little more understanding to people that are different than themselves. And I think it's something that community in Myrtle Beach is going to be really proud of, because it shows that we're very welcoming and hospitable. But I think more than anything, the biggest takeaway from me was that we're all more similar than we are different. It doesn't matter if you have a disability or you come from a different culture. The things that you care about, the passions you have for your family, your fears for the future of your children, they're universal. It doesn't matter who you are. So I really hope people see this and see themselves in it and say, leave this show thinking a lot of things, but one of them is, hey, I need to not judge people so much, and we are more similar than we are different. So I think it's the project I'm most proud of in my career, because I think it's not only going to be a very effective marketing campaign, but it's going to change the way people see the world.
What you did with the chef one, and as you're doing with this, it sounds like you're
Mhm.
finding a way to distribute it. So do you consider, like, it
Yeah,
seems like it's the media company type model, right? Like you are
it
actually
is. Yeah,
selling the
and that's
to the content, right?
correct. Yeah, and it's a challenge, and it's sort of my philosophy related to owned media came from my previous career. So I ran a B2B agency in the hotel space previously, and we had created a podcast. It was called the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast, and we just started more as a passion project, because we were having these deep conversations at lunch, and we said, well, we should just record these and put them out there and see what happens. And what we learned over time was, if we followed two simple rules: that we were entertaining, because you've got to be entertaining first when you're creating content, otherwise people won't consume it, and we're helpful, we're providing some kind of tangible tactic when we're doing this show, then people will not only listen, but they'll tell their friends and they'll come back. And so fast forward, we did that show for 6 years. We spent very little money. We started with an $80 Yeti mic. Eventually, after about 30 episodes, we spent about $500 on better equipment, better microphones, and a switchboard. But we never spent more than, less than $1,000 all in. And we ran that show for 6 years. And by the time I left the company, it was the number one podcast in the hotel marketing space. More importantly, it was our number one generator of new business. It shortened the life cycle of the sales process, because now most people that came to us were saying, hey, we've been listening to your show for the last year. We really like you. We already trust you. We want your services. So we didn't have to go through the dog and pony show that B2B companies usually have to do. And so that philosophy of creating branded entertainment, which is entertainment with the sort of sales message in the periphery or behind the scenes, was really, really effective at Fuel. And so that's the mindset I took to here. And with both Chef Swap, with Traveling the Spectrum, and other content that we're creating, we try to keep that same philosophy, where we're trying to help, not sell. We're trying to be entertaining first. We want this content to be viewed in the same sort of echelon as other content that people are creating. So whether it's a podcast, which we have a few of those, or a TV show, we want it to be indistinguishable from regular entertainment, so that people are watching this, they're consuming the hidden message, but they're still having that emotional connection with it, so that we can influence their thoughts and their behaviors later on. We're not telling them what to think, we're letting them choose to think the way we're encouraging them to think.
Stuart, you touched upon like somehow how some of the businesses in Myrtle Beach are adjusting the way they do things to be a little bit more inclusive. Um,
Mhm.
so beyond this series, how are you marketing offers to like the families to come down? Like, how are some of these businesses marketing? How are
Mhm.
you as in the travel industry marketing to families with children with special needs, or you know?
Yeah, so I mean, I think of us as storytellers. Our job as the destination marketing organization for Myrtle Beach is, our job is to tell the story. And so, in general, I believe that the marketers are storytellers. I believe that our job is to shine a light on the positive story that exists, whether it's a business, a service, whatever we're trying to promote, right? And so, in this case, it's really easy, because we can tell real stories of real people. So rather than saying, Hotel A is autism certified, we'll show the impact that has on families. We'll do short form video, or we'll do blog posts, or we'll do podcast episodes talking to people that are actually having the lived experience. Because we see ourselves not as the hero of the story, and it's not our philosophy. Right? Plenty of people have written about this concept, but we are the guide on the story. We're the people that are sort of helping people navigate the story themselves, and hopefully they see themselves as the hero of the story, vicariously through the characters that we introduce. So we're storytellers and we're promoting it across every channel, every medium with repetition and with a deliberate strategy. So when we choose the verbiage to refer to a specific thing, we're going to use that across every channel. We might modify it a little bit for the grammar or the nomenclature of that specific audience or that specific forum, whether that's a specific social channel. But it's about being deliberate with how you tell that story and being consistent across multiple channels and throughout time. Um, but sometimes you have to introduce new tactics. So with autism specifically, we wanted to make sure we had the product first, which is why we focused on the training first. Then we wanted to get commitment from businesses, so we went out and did what we call the Beaches for Everybody sensory friendly pledge, and we asked businesses to commit to being sensory friendly and publicly. And so we had, I think, about 60 or so businesses signed up for that pledge, and that was restaurants, attractions, and hotels. And then we started, once we had those businesses, we started developing resources within our website so people can discover it and find this stuff. And now we're sort of under the next phase of that, which is how do we create noise awareness through paid, earned, and owned media, which is why we're creating the TV show. We're also creating a children's book, which follows a series of children as they try to navigate the challenges of a vacation and come up to certain obstacles that they have to overcome. And so through the children's book, through the TV show, through other mediums like podcasting, we're beginning to tell the story in a more sort of holistic way versus just a promotional way. We don't think promotion of this is the right way to tell that story. It's about telling
Right.
real, authentic stories about people's experiences.
Have you talked to the businesses as they sign up? Has the initiative that you started, has it helped them attract more customers?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. I mean, Myrtle Beach has become, the sensory friendly capital of the world in a lot of regards. We've been pioneers. We were the first destination to get a quiet room at our airport in the world. We were the first destination to become certified sensory friendly by the Champion Autism Network. We were the first to offer sensory friendly events at a lot of our attractions. And so being pioneers, we needed to catalyze that. So we did start to bring in content creators, and people would refer to as influencers. We prefer to think of them as content creators, but folks that had an audience that were creating content that
Mhm.
were on the spectrum or had a family member on the spectrum. So that was a way we initially started to tell that story. And then we started seeing more people say, oh, I saw that person came here. I'm going to come. I'm going to go there. And one of the interesting things about the autism community is it's so tight knit. There's a few organizational hubs, but everyone talks to everyone and everyone shares resources. And so when you can sort of tap into an audience that is that communal, it sort of accelerates the adoption. And so we've seen that the word of mouth, which is always going to be the most powerful form of marketing, in whether it's in digital form or other, word of mouth is the most influence that you can have on anyone related to their behavioral decisions. And so we've seen a big uptick in people traveling here, with neurodiversity, not just autism, but ADHD and Down syndrome and other neurodiversity.
I'm curious, because if you go to travelingthespectrumshow.com,
Mhm.
Yeah.
when you have like join the movement and you ask people to sort
Mhm.
of send your comments about what this means to you, what sort of reactions or comments have you heard from families about this?
Yeah, that's been one of the most heartwarming pieces of this project. So one of the things we decided early on was we don't want this show to be about Myrtle Beach, right? We want it to be about the challenges of traveling with autism. So if you go to travelingthespectrumshow.com, the only reference to Myrtle Beach in that whole experience is at the very bottom has the Visit Myrtle Beach logo. And it didn't originally, the only reason we're doing that is because we are funded in part by taxpayers' dollars, and so for compliance reasons, we had to do that. But we don't want to be saying to people, "Come to Myrtle Beach because we're sensory friendly." We want to be spreading the message that 87% of families who have a kid on the spectrum don't travel, and we think that's an injustice that needs to be solved. And this show is a part of the solution because we're going to provide people with the resources and the encouragement to take the risk of traveling. And here are some ways you can reduce the friction in traveling. And we believe that if more people see that and choose to travel, then we're going to get more than our fair share. So it's going to reward us down the line. We also feel like if we're not standing at the front of that message, thumping our chest, saying, "Look at what Myrtle Beach did," it's going to spread further, right? We're going to have more impact on the world if it doesn't look to be a promotion from a destination. So it's a very deliberate strategy. But what I will say is people are seeing that it is us. They're finding out organically that it is us, and they're seeing, when they see episodes or when they see the trailer, they're seeing elements of Myrtle Beach. And so we are getting that positive sentiment come back to us. But the message that we're overwhelmingly hearing is it's one of positivity. Like, I've not heard the first disgruntled person or divisive comment. It's all universally, "Hallelujah, this is amazing. We are a family that are impacted by autism and we don't travel, but this is encouraging us to travel." Or, "We're a family that's impacted by autism and we do try to travel and it is hard, and I'm glad the world will now see the reality." Or we're also getting folks that haven't been impacted by autism that are seeing this and saying, "Thank you for sharing this, because I know more now about this condition and about how I play a part in the solution." So it really is, we're hearing from different cohorts, different groups of people, some with and some without autism, but universally it's one of, I can't wait to see the full 6 episodes of this show. It's been good. And we've gotten, I think that the trailer itself has reached over 750,000 people in 3 or 4 weeks. We've gotten thousands of emails coming in to support the movement. It's really getting some momentum now.
Was it hard to get buy-in for this particular type of project? The video series, I mean, you've already done it, I guess, so you had some success there, but video investment is a lot, like a 6-part series. That's not cheap to produce. So, and it's a very niche audience. Like, was it hard to get, buy-in for this type of a passion project?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long, deliberate process to get buy-in. So when I took over the job and I came in with a fresh perspective on what destination marketing organizations should be doing, the way we're governed is we have a board of directors. So we have 24 stakeholders that are owners or operators of local businesses that are members of our organization. And we're beholden to them. We answer to the board of directors. 12 of those are in the hospitality space. That's what we call our marketing council. And we meet with them monthly, and I talk with them often about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and we're serving them. And so it's very different than a for-profit organization. We really have to make sure this board of directors is fully informed, fully on board with everything we want. And we knew that the philosophy of shifting from paid to owned media was a big leap. So we spent the first 6 to 12 months that I was here really educating them on why paid media is going to continue to struggle from a return perspective for destinations, where the value is in owned media and the value that creates in earned media, and how audiences behavior is shifting, and how things like AI are going to continue to accelerate the changes in behavior. So we really were very methodical in building the bricks and the scaffolding around the argument that we had to lean into paid media, but we wanted to do it in a way that was comfortable for people, was digestible. And so we started by saying, what if we committed 10% of our budget to owned media, did a few projects to test it out, and if it's successful, we can begin to accelerate that. And so that's what we did. We started smaller with more direct, tangible owned media projects, and then we gradually ratcheted up to become a little more esoteric, a little more separated from our core brand messaging. And so, yeah, what you're seeing with this show is sort of that culmination of a 3-year strategy to move people from a conventional thinking to a more progressive thinking when it comes to a marketing approach. You have to start with the end in mind, right? You have to start with where do we believe we need to get to, and then you have to assume that the audience has none of the knowledge that you have to have led you to that conclusion, and you've got to reinforce and defend that decision brick by brick along the way. And so that's what we did.
I'm just curious how the process, like, you hired a video company, production company to work it. Like, how much of that storytelling process were you involved in along the way? I'm assuming you helped find the families, and then I'm just curious
Yeah.
how because I'm just curious how that process worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it certainly took a lot of very smart, skilled people to create this show. I think it was our idea initially. We worked with a company out of Philadelphia called The Workshop, and we had worked with them previously. I've always been of the philosophy that you should surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and if you don't know something, bring people in that do know it, and then try to learn as much as you can from them as you go through that process. So the workshop really helped us craft the narrative for this. What does the show look like? We were very, very specific that we wanted to have a director on the show that had a connection with autism, and crew members that had connections with autism as much as possible. So a director has a sibling that's on the spectrum, and so understands the challenges and the needs, and so that really helped when it came to dealing with the cost, the families that came.
I think that's a very important point what you said about finding that you found the partners who understood or had some sort of connection to the
Mhm.
autism or families on the spec. Like, I think that is like something that I don't know that most people would. You find a partner, they're gonna
Yeah,
shoot the video, but to make that an important part of the process, like they have to be able to help
yeah.
to understand what these families are going through. I
Mhm.
think that's a really important piece of
Yeah,
that.
that's one of the things that differentiates us from other destinations, because a lot of times destinations will have an agency of record that is very skilled at destination marketing. And then they'll come up with a project idea and say, we want to create this TV show, we want to create this children's book, and our agency can help us do this. And they can probably muddle through it and figure it out, but they're probably not the most qualified, and they're probably not going to produce the best product. So I'll give you an example. The children's book that we created, we said at the start, and we talked to some of our agencies about it, and we dabbled with the idea of them ghostwriting it with us. But then we came to the realization, no, it has to be authentic. And so to be authentic, we needed someone that was already a children's book writer, that had a connection to autism, and had a connection to Myrtle Beach, because we wanted it to be authentic. And so if you do that Venn diagram, right, of published children's book author, has a connection with autism, and loves Myrtle Beach with a passion, it's a very small part of people. So it literally took us several months to just scouring the world to figure out who that could be and if that person even exists. And we ended up finding the perfect person. Her name was Linda, and she has a son with autism. They've been coming to Myrtle Beach for 20 plus years, every year, same vacation every year. And she was a published children's book author and an illustrator. So we got one more than we even were looking for. And so she wrote the book, and we collaborated with her and made suggestions, but it was her book, her illustrations. And now we've got this piece of literature that is going to, not just entertain kids, but it's also going to help parents navigate the complexities of travel. And so I don't think many brands take that approach where they say it's not about us, and we don't need to control everything. We want the product, and that the result of the product is what's most important. It's not our ego. We don't care who takes credit. It's about how impactful this piece of project is. In the case with the workshop, and in Traveling the Spectrum, in the case of Linda and the children's book, we feel like we've hit a home run with both. So that's the philosophy we're going to continue.
So are you able to say yet, like, how this campaign has compared to any other campaigns do you have any tangible?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I would say 750,000 views on a 3-minute trailer is not bad, right? As
Right.
a lead KPI. I mean, there's not many videos that a DMO, the Destination Marketing Organization, puts out there that can say they have 750,000 views on YouTube, or 500,000 on YouTube, and 250,000 on Instagram and Facebook. So I think that's pretty good. We also measure things like media mentions and the value of those, and it's through the roof. So yeah, I think if we look at just core KPIs, it's a home run, I think, and that's before the show was launched. So I think once this actually 6 episodes come out, and the average consumer can see it, not only is it going to directly result in tangible travel to Myrtle Beach by first-time visitors, which we know first-time customers are the most valuable. but it's going to do something even bigger for us, which is going to change the perception of who Myrtle Beach is. People are going to look at us in an entirely different light. It's going to elevate our brand to this level that we've never seen before. So I think some of that's measurable, some of it's not, but it's, you know, even before the show was launched, we're very, very happy with the results we've gotten. And once it's launched, I think it's just going to be next level.
Speaking of that, like how can people spread the word, and like where can they learn more about, you know, traveling the spectrum and everything that you guys are up to?
Yeah, so our core website is visitmyrtlebeach.com if you want to learn more about our destination. There's the show itself is at travelingthespectrumshow.com, and I would encourage everyone listening or watching this to go to that site, travelingthespectrumshow.com, watch the trailer that's on that page. If you feel so inclined to move, sign up to support the movement. And then most importantly, share it with your friends. Share links to the trailer on all your social channels. The more people that see this, the more the message spreads, the more people we're going to help. And so that would be amazing. The only advice I would give you is get your Kleenex next to you when you watch the trailer, because there's a good chance you might cry a little bit. It's pretty moving.
As I mentioned, it's hard to stand out in this particular industry. And besides traveling the spectrum, you're also doing some other interesting marketing campaigns. Tell us a little bit about this experiment. This kind of caught our eye. You did on Reddit last fall. This was great.
Yeah,
fantastic.
So Reddit is a you know, it's a community that I personally love. I spend a lot of time on it, and I know it's one that brands typically shy away from for obvious reasons, right? The Reddit community is wicked clever, wicked funny, wicked dark at times, and so there's been a lot of, let's say, faux pas from brands on Reddit, but we're you know, we're trying to disrupt not just the destination industry marketing landscape, but marketing in general. We want to try things that people haven't tried before and do them in new ways. And you know, Reddit was sort of like a gauntlet that was thrown down to us. Like, can we crack the code on Reddit? And so we wanted to come up with a campaign that was very on brand with Reddit, and where, you know, we could be sort of part of the joke, but also be the deliverer of the joke in a way that we got the positive sentiment from that. And so our agency, MMGY Global, came up with this concept of AI to replace themselves. You know, it was last year, so it was when AI fever was, you know, at its height. Everyone was fear mongering, and no one was quite sure. You know, I think it was ChatGPT 3 or 3.5 at the time, so it wasn't quite perfect. You know, there was obvious issues, and Midjourney as the image generator that we used was a little quirky too. So we said, well, let's lean in, let's see really what it would create, and let's lean in on that whole narrative. So we created this story of firing our agency, replacing it with AI, and we created images and scripts to talk about the real things that are in Myrtle Beach, but with a unique twist. And so we leaned into the concept that AI overlords is what we refer to a lot. We're now in control of everything. And it's still on. If you go and type in Matari Best, MITARRY space best, that was what Reddit decided, or AI decided, to rename Myrtle Beach in its new campaign, because we prompted it to say, design a new campaign to reinvent Myrtle Beach, essentially. And so it came up with this name, Matari Best. It came up with some crazy ideas. It came up some really crazy imagery. But I think the bravest thing we did, and probably the best thing we did on Reddit, was we said, if we're going to go in, we're going to go all in. And obviously the community aspect of Reddit is what makes it special. The comments, the sort of crowdsourcing of content is what makes Reddit so special as a place and unique from other platforms. And so we had this big debate internally. Do we keep comments off like most brands do, or do we turn them on? And we took a gamble. We you know, it was an educated gamble, and we kept comments on. And I've never seen so many people that were so conflicted but impressed at the same time. There was a lot of comments that were like, I clicked on this ready to hate on it, but I actually really like it. Or this is the best advertising I've ever seen, but I hate you guys for tricking me. And so it was very much like we were part of the community all of a sudden. And it had, you know, within, I think it was like a 3-week campaign, something like that, we had over 40 million impressions on this post. And we evolved it over those 3 weeks. So, you know, after the initial post went out, people were saying, well, where can I learn more about Matari Best? So we end up creating a landing page within Visit Myrtle Beach's website that you can actually go to mataribest.com right now, and it'll redirect to that page. And so we sort of pretended there was a visitor guide for Matari Best, and we extended the joke there. And then people started asking, well, where can I get merch? So we spun up a merch store and put the logo it created for Matari Best onto the merch store and sold a bunch of shirts and hats and other weird stuff. But we leaned in even more. And so when you go to the merch store, instead of it saying, this is a baby onesie, it would be like a single human infant garment thing, so it was like very AI written terminology instead of just straight up language. So the whole thing from start to finish carried the joke through. And I think that's one of the things that made it special. But the other thing we did was we really interacted with the community and said, every comment we're going to respond to, whether they were hating on us or they were congratulating us, we were going to respond, and it was very tongue in cheek. So yeah, it was a fun campaign. It's hard to measure stuff like this in terms of tangible. Did it drive actual visitation? We think from what we can tell it did. But in terms of media impressions and getting written up in Ad Age twice in a week for the campaign, it garnered a lot of online attention. And a lot of people were saying things like, I've never been to Myrtle Beach, but I definitely want to consider it now. So I think it did its job well.
One of the comments was, I've never clicked on a Reddit ad before. And like this campaign made me click on this ad.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't even know how many comments on it. I know you turned the comments off, I think, on the thread finally, but it was like,
yeah,
I mean,
it was thousands, right? And they were all like that. And that, I think that's what I loved most about it is sort of, we got people into the joke, right? In a real positive way. Like part of what we try to do in marketers is create an audience. And if we can create an audience, we can create a community. And if we can create a community, then we can influence people's feelings, their thoughts, and eventually their behaviors. And so this was a community that already existed that we sort of hijacked for a little period, and we turned it into our community where we were a part of it and they were a part of us. So it was really impactful. So now our challenge is, what does version Matari Best 2.0 look like? Like, how do we go one louder on this type of campaign? And we're playing around with some ideas. So watch this space. We're hoping to have something out later this year that will be sort of the evolution of the Matari Best campaign.
I want to say, like, I feel like there's two important lessons with that. Is like, one, you have to know the platform, right? Like, how many brands jump into Reddit? You're obviously a Reddit user, you know how it works, you know the community. So that probably made sense for you guys to do that. But, so many brands just jump into a platform like that with not really understanding, what it's all about and how people use it, what the community is like. So that's an important part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at all the legislation that comes out, the regulations that come out, any backlash related to brands and advertising, it's all because of a lack of understanding of the advertiser, right? It's a lack of understanding of who your audience is and what their expectations are and what the social contract is with that person. And so there's a reason when you post something on X versus Facebook versus Instagram versus TikTok that they perform differently. These are all very different communities with their own rules and social contracts. And so you've really got to understand the audience in mostly how that audience is going to receive your message. And we've seen 99% of the big sort of headlines where brand gets it very wrong. It's rooted in the advertiser not understanding the consumer.
I think the other lesson there is that it sounds like you were able to pivot very quickly. So like once you saw what the reaction, we created a microsite. We started having merchandise. Like is that something your team is versed in? Like, you're like, okay, we're going to pivot and we're going to, do what needs to be done.
Yeah, we're very scrappy, agile team, like by design. Like most of the folks on my team come from the agency background, so they have a sort of variety of skill sets. But we talk a lot about, one, we create an environment where people aren't afraid to fail. Like we don't punish failure here. We sort of encourage experimentation, which by nature is going to fail at times. So we encourage people to try things and learn, test and learn and adapt. And so I think that culture that we've created is really important. But then whenever you're trying something new, we tend to sort of dip our toe in. So the initial investment in Reddit wasn't that large. We wanted to see how people were to respond, and then you can sort of always expand or contract based on the results. But yeah, I mean, you've got to pay attention to what you're doing, right? The worst thing we can do as a DMO, a destination marketing organization, or any advertiser is just to throw things out there or scream something through a megaphone and then walk away and ignore the response, right? Because the response is as important as anything else. It's how we learn, it's how we improve, it's how we understand our audience better. And our audience is always going to give us signals on what they like and what they don't like, and that should always inform our next decision. And so paying attention to your audience, listening to your audience, engaging your audience, understanding the experience that they're having, not just when they're purchasing your product or coming into your business, but when you interact with them in any way. Every touch point you have with your audience, whether it's digital or in the real world, you have to be there and you have to monitor that and you have to understand what influence that is, because every touch point you have with your audience is an opportunity to improve and tighten the relationship or to frustrate and erode the relationship. And so the Reddit thing could have been an opportunity for us to piss off a lot of people that are fans of Myrtle Beach already. And so we wanted to make sure that if it turned that way, which it could have, we were ready to adjust. And so fortunately it didn't go that way, went the other way. But because we were ready for the other side, we were ready also for the opportunity that arose. And it's working. If you look at the metrics, Myrtle Beach is the number one searched summer vacation destination in the world or in the US on TripAdvisor, Booking.com, Expedia. So we've stolen a lot of market share over the last 3 or 4 years post-COVID, and we continue to be. People don't know this. Myrtle Beach is the most visited beach destination in the country for American travelers. And so we get 20 million people a year here. So hopefully everyone listening to this is now more interested in traveling to Myrtle Beach than they were maybe a few minutes ago.